Welcome to Ringsiders Wrestling, everybody. Today on the show, we've got a very special guest who we've been so excited to speak with for quite a while now. As you can see, Kid Bandit, welcome to Ringsiders Wrestling.
Hello.
And how are you?
It's kind of surreal because I would watch some of the interviews that you guys have of others.
Really?
I'm here. Yeah, I think Danhausen.
Yeah, Danhausen.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's surreal to us. Actually, now you mention it, we always just think that we put videos up and no one watches them. So it's always weird to hear that people actually watch our stuff.
yeah. I think one of the things that make me not stand out, but like it kind of differentiates me from a lot of my fellow peers is that I'm very open about. Oh, that's my alarm. Sorry. Ah. That is the alarm for this interview because I am not I am not well put together. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm pretty open about how I enjoy the other stuff that most marks would be frowned upon. Like, oh, why are you watching the shoot interview, or why are you watching all this interview? Well, because I'm a fan.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm not really afraid. I don't shy from that, as it were. So,
yeah, this is something I was saying to you before the interview. Something that stands out about you that I found on Twitter anyway. I don't know you personally, but from what I see on Twitter, you seem to be a very genuine person. And I think, like you've just mentioned, you are still a fan. And you do watch the interviews, you watch the shoot interviews. Do you just try and consume as much wrestling media as you can? Is that how you've always been?
yeah, I mean, this is kind of sounds sappy, but when I'm not doing anything wrestling related, I get depressed because it does. It's like such a huge passion of mine. But because of the way I present myself in wrestling, because I'm not a purist, as it were, because I have a very, I guess, like a niche style of wrestling.
Yeah.
People assume that I see it as like kind of like an alternative content or just something that I kind of enjoy, but people don't understand. I travel every weekend out of
Hmm.
state. I'm never home anymore because I wrestle every week. So it comes to the point where this is my life, and now I'm trying to show people that hey, if you can be a wrestling enthusiast and a wrestling like uber fan without decorating all your walls with like all the past WWE champions, or having like this obscure knowledge about AJPW or whatever. Like
Yeah.
everybody is entitled to like how they enjoy wrestling. I enjoy it, but based off like the performance art aspect of it, and I enjoy it because it's hella fun. It's very. I think wrestling. Effy put it in like really good words when I went to one of his seminars. He basically said we are the consummate performer in that we're part actors, part stunt people, part writers, comedians. In my case, so every form of like media, we kind of like entertainment. We have a little bit of like experience on. That's why like
Yeah.
when certain stars cross over to Hollywood, like Dwayne the Rock Johnson or John Cena, they do so well because like they kind of have an experience in doing so like a bunch of everything during their time in WWE. And the best part about all this in wrestling is that there's no retakes. It's all live, and there's no camera angles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of improvisation, and that's why I fell in love with wrestling. It's performance art to the extreme on steroids.
Yeah, it really is. It's the ultimate performance art. And I think as, when we start watching wrestling as kids, that's kind of what draws us towards it. Even though we don't realize at the time, that's what stands out to wrestling for me. Like as I've got older, it's been less about the moves and more so about like the entrances and the storylines. That's what I'm into nowadays. I still love the moves. I still love watching wrestling, but
Exactly.
what what I enjoy about wrestling has changed. And I think you mentioned before, like, there's no like set way to be a wrestling fan. You can watch just WWE and you're still as much of a wrestling fan as somebody who watches New Japan Pro Wrestling. There's no like, I hate gatekeeping in wrestling, and
Absolutely.
it's the worst thing. If you enjoy wrestling, you're a wrestling fan, and it doesn't matter what you watch as long as you're watching and enjoying wrestling. And I feel like I get that impression from yourself. You just enjoy watching and consuming wrestling.
Yeah, and it's so diverse, and that's the best part. Is like I'm not a big fan of like the big hoss fights
Yeah,
as a as me because of the way I wrestle. Because I'm very light. I'm more of a cruiserweight. When I move, it's very acrobatic, and I know there is that like part of the wrestling community that dislikes the way I wrestle because they want to see hoss fights, but not a lot of people know this, and I'm exposing myself right now. When I make characters in the 2K video games, I'm always wrestling as like a super heavyweight. Like
really.
my, yeah, they're like they're it's all power bombs and tombstones and all that stuff from my creator wrestler. I don't my creator wrestler like back in the day. My creator wrestler was a lot like how I wrestle now, but as time progressed, I have garnered a much more of an appreciation for like the powerhouses for the people who are strong because I started going to the gym and I understand how difficult it is for
Yeah,
people to pick people up for these moves. And 9 times out of 10, I'm always on the receiving end of these power moves anyway. So I've developed such an appreciation for that kind of style. But I understand that some people don't like that kind of wrestling because they think it's too team, it's too WWE. And in the indies, when people want to see flair, they want to see
yeah.
flash, a pageantry, as it were. So I like to think that wrestling, because of how it is so it's very diverse, and there's something for anyone.
Yeah, that's the good thing about wrestling. And while we're on the subject of like the wrestling video games, one thing I thought the first time I saw you wrestle, which completely honest, it was only maybe mid to late last year when you started doing some work for AEW. I think that was a lot of people's first exposure for yourself.
Yeah,
And I
my,
remember
my
thinking,
appearance in Dark made my career
that's
basically.
it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember thinking this. You wrestle like a video game. Like some of the moves that I saw you doing, I've first of all some moves I've never seen before in my life, and the innovation blew me away. And from then, we've wanted you on the show just from that. And I remember thinking, how the hell do you come up with some of these moves? Because one thing I've heard about you is you come up with a lot of moves. So how do you do that? And what's the inspiration behind like coming up with all these new moves in wrestling when really there's nothing original in wrestling anymore, but you still manage to do it?
I I'm not completely original. There's some things that I like to credit myself as like, oh, this is like totally me, and like nobody's ever done this before. But there's some stuff are just variations of like moves I like. Like one of
Yeah.
my signature moves, the Angel Killer. It's a combination of my two favorite moves. It's the one winged angel and Ushigoroshi, and I just found a way to combine the two. And I'm like, oh, I'm surprised nobody's done this before.
Yeah.
Um, my metronome kick, which is like everybody calls it a double tiger feint kick. It's more of like a leg lariat into a tiger feint, and that one's just because I really like Rey Mysterio. So
Yeah.
I want to do the 619 without outright doing the 619. My submission wise, like a lot of the stuff I come up with, I watch a lot of Zack Sabre Jr. and I see the way his wheels are turning when he's putting people into pretzel. I watch a
Mhm.
lot of Gresham. I see the way the way he moves and stuff. Because as a student of the game, you kind of start understanding how certain things are physics wise. And I like to think that everything I've done in my life was to prepare myself for wrestling. And I'm like, it's weird, but like me playing all those video games, like going like hours and hours and hours, like going through the move set and like 2K or like even SmackDown versus Raw, that kind of like the green guy and the red guy,
Yeah.
as it were. I saw myself doing those things, and I like to believe that like a good chunk of people doing wrestling now, they used to like do this to their pillows.
Oh,
They would.
we all did. We all did. I
So
still do sometimes, I'll be honest. Like,
right,
yeah.
like yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of like the innovation just comes from me like messing around with like myself, and I'm like, oh, like what if I do this or what if I do that? Then I find someone willing to like kind of workshop the move with me, and I'm like, oh, what if we do this? And so I can't take full credit of like a lot of the innovations because I have had help. I've had people kind of guide me along. My trainers, JTG, Cody,
Mhm.
QT, Santino Rose. There's always a little bit of a playing hand, but the ideas itself, they just come from my like just me trying pay tribute without outright ripping off. Because I have ripped off people like Mike Bailey, for instance. Like I straight up just do a lot of Mike Bailey's kicks, but that's because I think they're one of the most innovative wrestlers today. And they're so good. As far as like some of the other stuff I bring in, like as if like I wrestle in a video game, that's because I take my moves from Tekken. So
right, okay. That another great game, by the way. Absolutely love Tekken. You mentioned Cody. We've got to mention Cody. How important has he been at this early on in your career? Has he? I know I've seen a few tweets where you mentioned he has helped you along the way. What have you learned from Cody in the time that you've spent with him?
Unfortunately, I've only been at the Nightmare Factory for 3 months. I
Mhm.
want to be there a lot more, but I did not move to Atlanta. But if you are interested in making that and going all in, as it were, definitely worth it. As far as what I learned from Cody, it's a lot of how to navigate the business and how to be a character. And it's weird because like people assume, oh, Cody gave Kid Bandit their character. Well, like y'all remember Cody was Stardust, right? Like Cody at one point was Stardust, and one of the best advices that he gave me specifically, and it's really cute because he's told me that the rule book doesn't apply to me. Other wrestlers, there's a rule book that you check all these boxes, yada yada, and good consummate wrestler. In my case, because I'm such an outlandish gimmick, I'm such an outlandish personality, he was able to pull from his experience at Stardust, where it's like you look at your rule book and you throw it out the window because instead of answering questions as Kid Bandit, it's better to leave the viewers wondering what was that. A little bit of like that mystery. So in a weird way, I play off that. I lean in on the mystery aspect. It's like, is Kid Bandit, like, what are they doing? So I open a lot. I open up a lot on Twitter. Like I post about like just like regular stuff, my thoughts and musings and all that stuff. But there's still that level of like mystery where I like, now that I have kind of opened the floodgates a little bit, people are curious as to what am I underneath all that. And ultimately, there's not much of the difference of like when people actually hang out with me, they realize, oh, Kid Bandit's exactly like how they are.
Right. Okay.
But there is that level of like musing of like, are they really like that? Is there like because I obviously as an entertainer, I have to kind of play it up a little bit. Like
of course.
The very famous adage of you as a wrestler is you turned up to 11. That is exactly who I am online, and that's what makes it like so, I guess in your words, genuine and easy for me to maintain, because I don't have to be something I'm not. I'm just playing it up, as it were. So, and that's what makes, I think that's what really made everyone gravitate towards me too. And the more I become self-aware of that, it's that people want to see, like, we live in the society in the wrestling community where not that long ago we had to like Google and like watch interviews like this to get a backstage insight on our favorite wrestlers. Like I remember watching RVD's shoot interview. I remember Simon, the iconic interview with Simon Gotch burying Enzo Amore for 18
Of
minutes.
course,
Always shows up in my YouTube recommended. Like I'm like I've seen it like twice, but like it's always there.
Always.
And we understand that wrestling is drama, but what we want to see, and I hate it because like we shouldn't be like this, but that's how nature, the human nature is that we like to see backstage drama.
Yeah.
So any insight of like the individual that you're following that goes beyond the character they portray, like, oh, are they really feuding in real life? Is it a real beef? We all like gravitate towards that. I hate that. But I understand that showing glimpses of who you are beyond the persona that you portray is money. People want to see that. But the key is for me, because like I said, I hate drama. I especially when there's Twitter drama. I like, my first instinct is like, oh, something's going on. So with so and so, let me post something completely off left field to distract everyone from that, because I don't want to be part of that. I don't like being dragged into drama. I can barely handle my life as it were.
Yeah.
I don't think I can handle drama. So I make it a mission to do alternative content, but at the same time, I understand it's like you're in the freeway, you're driving, and you see like a car going up in flames. You can't help but stare.
You have to look. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going on with, at least in the social media aspect of wrestling, and it is mentally draining. Don't recommend everyone handle it. I can handle it because I role play. I used to role play a lot as growing up. So part of me, it's so easy for me to like kind of just like walk away from that and turn off the role playing aspect. Even though I'm role playing as me, I'm role playing as like a more extreme version of myself.
Yeah, so but you can make that separation between the two, and hopefully, like if you ever, I can't imagine, honestly, I struggle with the following we've got, and that's only a couple of notifications per day. Like, I can't imagine what it's like for yourself, but it's so important to be able to distance yourself from that social media aspect, especially like yourself, you must get a lot of interaction on a daily basis. I wouldn't be able to deal with that. And it's good that you can, because, you know, I've like I said, you've got people now, like you've got quite a good Twitter family, so to speak. You've got Nyla Rose, Marcus Bagwell. How has that, like, how does that feel? I mean, you've got the support of Buff Daddy and Nyla Rose. They're your biggest fans.
Is my older brother.
Yeah, how is that?
Sunny's also my mother as well. So it's a big growing family, and I'll talk about it in a non kayfabe standpoint, in that I think wrestling Twitter is very toxic in the way that a lot of the content that usually blows up are scandals. Oh, Kushida left WWE. Now everyone's like speculating as to why. Oh, did they mistreat them? Was WWE racist? We don't know. None of us work there. I mean, I have friends that work there, but I'm not, like I said, I don't like drama. I try to steer clear of that. I think the Buff Bagwell and Nyla's like interactions, and I'm kind of involved in there somehow, it provides a much more wholesome take on Twitter that it's like, oh, and that side of Twitter, everybody can talk about like all the messed up things, or like the people you can't name anymore, like the Voldemorts of wrestling, like or the J.K. Rowlings of wrestling, as it were. And then you go on the other side, and I think that's where I'd like to stay. It's like, hey, if you go on my Twitter page, I'm going to make sure it's a positive thing, wholesome thing. I'll complain every once in a while, but I'll complain about like not forgetting to follow my state. Relatable, like woo cute like issues that you know, like, oh, that sucks, but like, hey, you know, it's not that bad, because we are entertainers. What we do is entertainment. And I love that Cody kind of brought it up in an interview too. We are in the industry of connecting with people, and you don't really, like, I like to think of it this way, and a lot of old like veterans in the business might see it the same way. I know a lot of them don't, but back in the 80s, it's all about kayfabe. It's all about like, oh, like the baby faces can't hang out with the heels in the bar because it's kayfabe, all that stuff, right? Oh, like there's this wild story of like, if you end up in the bar fight, you better win, otherwise like you're exposing the business.
Yeah. And
it's like, wow, that's absurd. How does that translate into a modern world in 2022 where everybody knows that wrestling is like, you know, predetermined? Well, in my case, I embrace the fact that, hey, this is performance art. I am a performer. When the cameras and the lights are off, I have a different, like, you know, life outside of this. But on Twitter, I get to be Kid Bandit 24/7. I get to uphold that kayfabe. And Kid Bandit is very in touch with like the wholesome side of this things, and I don't even understand how I ended up becoming an LGBT icon. I don't get it. Like because I barely embraced that part of me like a year ago. Not even a year ago. It's like less than a year ago. You know, I've been out to my close friends, but I was not like out like I am now, like doing interviews in full femme form and all that stuff. But I documented that entire journey. I document my transition. I document everything, not because it's profitable, because it hasn't been. I hope one day it will be, but I document everything because there's going to be certain people who need to see that, to need to see someone like me succeed, or not even just succeed, just exist. And I've noticed that a lot of my fan base, like the market, the demographic that really likes Kid Bandit, they have a tendency to be ostracized,
Hmm.
and they go through struggles that I've personally gone through, if not gone through some similar struggles as well. So I I like to think that my platform is a privilege, and if I don't use it properly, it can easily just get taken away from my feet.
Yep.
Especially because the person I am on Twitter, it's almost as if like everybody assumes I can do no wrong. That is absolutely not true. I have flaws. I have really bad flaws. I play League of Legends, you know. So,
Don't admit
yeah, yeah.
that.
So if I slip on a banana peel, like everyone might end up coming to crucify me. So there's a lot of pressure, but in my heart of hearts, I know it. I know like, and I love that I had a trainer once tell me this because I didn't get it at the time. It's Glacier actually. Glacier was one
Awesome.
of them. I didn't get it at the time because he was talking about fans, and I'm like, I haven't even like debuted yet. What the hell are fans? Like, I'm a fan, you know.
Yeah.
But he explained very accurately that a lot of like people live vicariously through us, and we cannot take our responsibility as their role models for granted. And I never once thought in my life I'd be a role model, but now that I am, I'm glad I got that piece of advice from Glacier, because now I take that responsibility seriously. I got to make sure that like not to be a beacon of hope, because that's arrogant to say, but
Mm.
gotta ensure that whatever I do, I have to be true to myself, and I have to walk the path of like good, because that's what's expected of me. That's what I expect out of myself. So
Yeah, I completely get that, and I think you mentioned it before. You do have a really wholesome community right now on Twitter. Like you can go to your tweets, and it's mostly just people being positive, helping each other out in the comments, and you can't really find that in many places on Twitter right now. And it seems like everything you post, you seem to have like some wholesome interaction. Buff Bagwell gets involved or whatever, and the whole
yeah,
Bagwell thing for me is one of my favorite things on Twitter this year, by far, maybe ever. Seeing Buff Bagwell come to Twitter and start tweeting all these wholesome things, I absolutely love it. Who
and
sent the first tweet out of you and Bagwell? Who made the first interaction?
it was them.
Right.
They kind of tagged me, and I was like, and part of me was like, because when older wrestlers get on Twitter, part of me thinks, oh, that's a fan account. That's not the real them.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, I think that's the real one. I'm like, oh my god, it is the real one. Oh my god, now I'm freaking out. I'm like, that's Buff Bagwell. That's freaking Buff Bagwell. Like I used to work at a wrestling store that like would sell like figures, and people would come in and be like, is there a Buff Bagwell figure here? And then we wouldn't have it because it's like more on the rare side, and they would pay like hundreds and hundreds of dollars for like collectibles of Buff. And I'm like, wow, yeah, like here, let me go find it and stuff. So, and to go from that, and this happened like last year too, so it wasn't like too far long ago, like where I used to work at this wrestling store. So when I finally like started interacting with Buff, I'm like, oh my god, like you're like, it wasn't that long ago where you were an action figure on like the shelves I used to work with. Now I'm like talking with you. Now you're telling me that like you're gonna beat up anyone who's like mean to
That's
me. Like this
surreal.
is
Yeah.
insane.
I can't imagine how surreal that is. Like sometimes we will do an interview and I'll be sat there thinking, I used to watch this person on TV when I was younger,
Yeah,
and I'm marking out, trying to keep calm. I can't imagine what it's like for yourself now. Like you said, they're saying, "Oh, I'll beat up anyone who gives you hassle online or anything." That's amazing, and that's the
yeah,
kind of wholesome support we need
or
on Twitter.
yeah, I agree. It's so surreal that Nyla Rose is Mother Bandit on Twitter,
Yeah,
and Nyla like was the women's champion in the AEW of the best company in the world, and they're like, "Yeah, you're my kid now." I'm like, What?
And it's actually the name as well, Mother Bandit on Twitter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm freaking. I'm constant. I'm in a constant like state of like wondering when I'm gonna wake up from this fever dream because this kind of came out of nowhere. Like everything came out of nowhere. My life changed so much so fast within the span of 9 months
yeah.
because I've only been wrestling for 9 months, and that's
Really? You've
yeah.
been wrestling for 9 months.
Yeah,
That's
I debuted last June 27th. Yeah, that's when my debut.
what?
June 28th. Yeah, that's when I debuted. So everything that's happening right now, like, kind of just happened out of nowhere. It's like, whoa, where did this come from? And people kind of assume I've been doing it for like a couple of years because
I
I'm
thought
like,
so. Yeah.
yeah, I'm in my mid 20s, and people just assume I blew up out of nowhere. But no, this I just started. Um, yeah, I barely started. This is all new to me, and I think that's one of the best things too about like being new is that because I blew up the way I did, and I can't really think of anyone who got this much traction this early on in their career
No.
outside of like someone that like outside of someone that's already in a bigger company when they started. So like
Yeah, definitely. I mean the last person. Well, to be fair, no, not even Danhausen because he was in the wrestling business for a few years and then
yeah,
became Danhausen, and then
yep,
it took a couple of years to really take off. With yourself,
yeah.
9 months. I
So
honestly
so
thought you'd been
imagine
wrestling for about 3 or 4 years.
no, I mean I've been training for a while, like about the same. I started training in 2019, but I actually haven't started working in the industry until last year, and this is one of those things where like in Danhausen's case where he blew up, but he already had like a an inkling of how to navigate the indies.
Yeah.
I was like a fish out of water, just wondering. Like to put it in perspective, my AEW Dark debut was against Fuego Dos and Fuego del Sol. Fuego del Sol was one of the hot, like, and I still believe this, like, in my heart of hearts. Like, he is like one of the hottest, like, talents in like hottest topics in AEW. Like,
Hmm.
everybody was all about to sign Fuego del Sol. That heartwarming moment between him and Sammy, the vlog crew, and all that stuff. Like, he was always on constant like forefront. And then his tag team partner Fuego Dos, which I guess because Cody left AEW, I can talk about it now. Fuego Dos is Cody Rhodes, who is also my childhood idol. I used to play as Cody in season mode of 2009, I believe, SmackDown vs. Raw. You know, uh, I grew up watching Cody. He owns the company. He's also my trainer, and I debuted in Dark against Cody, and I kicked him in the head. So like, and that all happened in the first 3 months of my career, very first 3 months,
That's
and
insane.
I was like on Reddit. There were Reddit threads. There was 4chan threads, which is
I
weird
remember.
because
Yeah.
I used to go to 4chan when I used to have like no life, and like my friends like message me. He's like, "Hey, they're talking about you in 4chan." I'm like, "I haven't been in 4chan in years. What? Why are they talking about me in 4chan? I hope it's good."
Oh
You
yeah,
know?
if I found out someone was talking about me on 4chan, I'd panic.
Yeah, I was like, "What?" You know, I haven't really been in there, so I'm kind of curious now. Maybe I should check. So, like, anyway, like, yeah, like they were talking about me on these forums and all that stuff. Not all of it was good, but talk is
They're
talk.
still talking.
Exactly. And then I showed up on Dark again, and then I trended on Twitter. I was like I guess like I was like the number one trend in Australia for 4 days, and I was like, what? How did this happen? You know, and just having this amount of like constant feed of like attention, it's very overwhelming,
Hmm.
especially for someone that went from like obscurity to like where I'm at. Somebody like it's so weird because I work every Saturday. Like I haven't had a weekend that I didn't work, with the exception of like 2 weeks on December where everyone was doing Christmas and New Year's, and there were no shows at all going on in that
Yeah.
time period. But since my debut, I have worked every single week, and unfortunate, not a lot of people get to do that. But I don't work the same place. I work everywhere around the country. So when there's this promotion locally, that I started out relatively unknown, and every time I come back, like my stock has gone up immensely to the point where somebody pointed out, and I love this, but it's also like, the more I think about it, the more overwhelming it gets. It's like, yo, you're like one of the biggest stars in the indies right now. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then it hit me. It's like, oh my God, you're right. Like everyone talks about me. Like, and then Allie Catch, when I wrestled her on San Francisco, like we were doing merch during intermission, and she came up to me. She's like, look how long your line is. And then I looked over and I was like, oh my God. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like I hope I'm not keeping them all waiting, but to be someone that not that very long ago would be one of the fans standing in line to meet someone, to being someone with a line of people waiting to meet me in less than 9
I
months.
can't imagine how that feels to look and see people waiting to just come and talk to you and get an autograph. That must be crazy to think about.
I used to like not charge people for like my 8x10s because I'm just happy to give it out. But I had people like kind of like talk to me and be like, hey, no, like you need to profit off this. Like, don't worry, they'll pay for you. I'm like, yeah, but like I'm not that good. And then it hit me like
so humble.
Yeah, but I remember paying like good money to like see Gargano like one time for NXT. So I definitely understand that now. So it because I'm always like I'm not. My friend kind of joked it as like, you're a content creating machine, aren't you, Banditt? Well, yeah, because like we all joke about wanting to do this as a full-time job. We don't joke about it. That's our dream. But you have to treat it like it is a full-time job. You have to treat every moment as if like, like, because a full-time job, you're working like what, 40-hour a week top? I don't know how it is from where you're from, but
40 hours.
Yeah, it's about 40 hours. Yeah, it sucks. But that's how you sustain yourself. If you're in the entertainment industry and you're not putting in at least 40 hours of your week to market yourself, to come up with content, to travel for your shows, all that stuff, then how can you expect to receive that much of like, how can you expect a return of investment? Obviously going viral helps. I've gone viral a bunch of times, but as soon as I go viral, I try to capitalize on that. And I make sure I like, hey, no, like I'm going viral here. Let me plug everything in. Let me make a profit off this. And then on the flip side of that, there's also that problem of like, oh, I'm gone viral. Let's hope it's for a good reason.
Yeah.
It's a good taste. If I'm going to capitalize on this viral fame, I want to make sure it's not because I'm trying to be dramatic. There's no scandal. I want to make sure that this is proper because like I said earlier, the audience that gravitates towards me, I guess they've been through enough. They need a little bit of light in their lives. That's
absolutely. And you mentioned before about Effy. Effy is someone who you've learnt from as well. He's got such a good business mind for wrestling. We've spoken to Effy a few times, and I remember just thinking, Effy is so good at the business side of wrestling and marketing yourself as like a business because you are a freelancer. You're an independent wrestler. You're a freelance business. Really, you are your own business and you've got to promote yourself as such. And has Effy been somebody who's helped you and guided you for all of that?
Yeah, so how I said like I used to just want to give out my autographs for free? Like Effy was the one who kind of said, no, you got to profit on that.
Right, okay.
So, and like it does kind of like make me happy that I ran into Effy this early in my career where I'm at because you don't really see self-made stars in wrestling anymore. And what I mean by that is like someone who isn't signed to a major company. Back in the day, I remember Super Dragon would run PWG and you'd hear about guys like Kyle O'Reilly or Tommy End, and you're like, you had no idea who these people are, but when you see them wrestle, you're like, wow, they're amazing. But it was all word of mouth and stuff like that. And then it was an inevitability for them to get signed to a major company like AEW, WWE, Roderick Strong, like all those people. We live in an era in pre-pandemic, wrestling was in a golden age, right? But the pandemic happened, everything had to readjust. But now on the now that it's being rebuilt, we're looking at new stars emerging out post pandemic, like stars like Danhausen, stars like Hook, Effy, Ali, Nick Gage. A lot of them are self-made stars because like AEW never made Danhausen. AEW picked up Danhausen because Danhausen was inevitable. Effy is like every time you see a poster and you see Effy's like cute little smile, you're like, wow, this is a big deal. This is like Effy's a big name. We want to go see Effy, and like I'm glad I ran into Warhorse and Effy because they kind of help put things into perspective. Who I am right now is someone that's kind of walking that traction that like, oh, like you could be the next Danhausen. I'm like, wait, well, that's an honor. I never thought I would become like that kind of like, like I never thought I'd pick up steam the way I did, but without their guidance, I would not be able to profit off this. And I hate using the word profit because it's like, oh, you're exploiting people. Like, no, yeah, but I want to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
I know what you mean. It's not so much that you're profiting as a byproduct. I mean, they're just being very helpful to you anyway. The success that comes from them helping, that's just going to happen. Like I said, you're an independent wrestler, and you'll take all the help you can get, especially from people like Effy, like Warhorse, Ali. I imagine they're so helpful to you in your career. Like I said, I thought you'd been wrestling for years. You've been wrestling for 9 months. So all of that help for you is going to be, I can't even imagine where you're going to be in 2 years' time. If this is 9 months, what does 2 years look like? What does next year look like for you? That's a scary thought, but also quite exciting because if you're this far in already, I can only imagine you'll have trended on Twitter about 50 times by then because you've trended on Twitter about 5 times in the last week. So
it's scary. It's very scary.
Do you have any plans to come to the UK? This is one question I've got to ask because Warhorse is here right now.
I know. Yeah. They look like they're having the time of their life and I love it. I have been talking with I don't know if you're familiar. Like now I was about to say their name, but then like okay. Rebecca. Yeah. I just had their name. I hate my life. The Blue Eyes White Dragon of pro wrestling. She has gear very My Hero Academia. They recently started wearing a Bakugo inspired gear.
I don't know, but that sounds amazing because anything Yu-Gi-Oh is like I'm well on board.
She's incredible. I feel so bad because I just referenced her, Rebecca Resnick. I might have it. I might have said that wrong, but I've been talking with them nonstop, and I'm so sorry. I like I literally had it. Wrestling, it does wonders for your brain. So she and I have been talking for a while, and I said that one of my goals is to go international by the end of 2022. Mm-hmm. So I have my passport process being done. It's just a matter of one of the places I'm planning to go to by the end of this year is Europe, specifically the UK, because I think by winter I have a booking in the UK. If not, I'll figure it out. Well, there'll be something, and it might be awesome. It might end up becoming like just a one-time thing, might become a two-time thing. Either way, I just want to be able to say, look, I wrestled outside of the United States. I've wrestled in Europe. Not a lot of people can say that within 2 years' time in their wrestling career, they got to be international. And it would be even better if I can pull this off, like, very, very soon, because they're like one of my worries is because there's an oversaturation of Kid Bandit right now on Twitter. There's an oversaturation of me in the indies because one thing I have noticed is that the big names in wrestling in the indie circuit, they don't wrestle as much as I do. I wrestle every week everywhere, so I'm worried that the oversaturation of me might turn people away. But then it hit me. It's like, well, no, because I don't care. At the end of the day, I get to do what I love. So
exactly. That's the main thing, right? And
Exactly.
the bigger companies out there who are going to sign you one day, they're not going to care if you're wrestling every weekend. As long as you're enjoying it and your career is progressing, that's the main thing. The fans in attendance are going to enjoy it regardless. I don't think anyone's going to sit there going, there's a bit too much of this wrestler around nowadays. They're just going to enjoy the wrestling, and that's all you can really ask for. One thing I will say is if you do come to the UK, ask Warhorse for his advice because it seems like he's having a little trouble navigating the English dialect and way of life at the moment because there's so many things which are confusing him. And it's amazing to watch on Twitter because he just seems so confused by everything. So
Yeah,
maybe pick his brain and see what advice he can give you.
I will. I love the fact that they're documenting everything too. It's like, oh my gosh, like that's like cool stuff to look forward to, you know?
Yeah, I think in Warhorse's mind, he imagined it to be like Harry Potter when he came over, or like some kind of wizard world. And I was just like, I think you're going to be a bit disappointed. It's it's nothing like that, but seems like they're having a good time anyway.
That's good.
Before we start to wrap up and everything, I was going to say, I usually say, what's your social media? Where can people find you? But I feel like this is one time where everybody already knows where to find you. But please tell us anyway. Do you have any merchandise?
I okay, so the merch department is where I'm struggling at because
Right.
I'm not I don't like plugging in my merch because I don't want to sound like I'm peddling stuff, even though like I absolutely can. Like that's it's part of my way of life. It's actually like, you know, so my merch store, it's all compiled in the one nice link called Linktree, link Link, like link from Legend of Zelda, tree.com/Kid Bandit Pro. And every social media platform I'm at is all under Kid Bandit Pro as well.
Brilliant. And we will have to get you back on in the future. One, because I'm really interested to see where you are in like another 6 to 9 months. Two, Jamie was meant to be doing this interview tonight, and he is gutted that he couldn't do it with me. So he's actually messaged me during the interview saying to pass on apologies for not being able to attend this one. So if you don't mind, we'd love to get you back on in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kid Bandit. We won't keep you any longer. You said that you've got some food to go and eat that you've
Oh, I
made
forgot about
before
that.
the interview. Don't forget your food. I'll feel terrible if you do.
Okay. See
But
you.
yeah, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.